So now that we've got our basic setup, we can start looking at our first example. We're going to use JavaScript to change text. So everything here is set up properly. We're going to go to our JavaScript page. How JavaScript works is that you will use what are called functions to accomplish various tasks. To start, you need to declare that you're writing a JavaScript function by writing the word function. You then will give this function a name. Functions can be named almost anything. There's a few reserved words. But if I just wanted to name it maybe example1, I could do that. After the name goes what's called the parameter list. The parameter list is extra information you would send the function to do its job. You could do this entire assignment without ever using any parameters, but you still need to have the brackets or else it doesn't work. Like how we did with our style sheet, we'll need a set of curly braces to enclose our JavaScript code. Then, what will be really important here is that you have to match spelling and capitalization exactly or it will not work. We will need to tell the JavaScript function where it's going to get its information from. It starts by telling it that we're going to get information from a document, which would be our HTML page. We're going to get the elements, or what we're accessing, by ID. You'll notice every time I start a new word, it's capitalized, element by an ID, but the first one's not. This is called camel case, where after the first word, the first letter of every word you put is capitalized. It has to be written this way or it does not work. So document.getElementById, brackets. We will need to have an ID on our page. At the moment, we don't have one, but I could just make one up for now called maybe ID1, because it will be the first ID. It needs to go in quotation marks though. So document.getElementById, quote, bracket, quotation mark, ID1. Again, this could have been almost anything. That's just what I chose to make it. To affect what's written on an HTML page, you are affecting the inner HTML. So after that, we put dot inner HTML. This is how we'll change what's written. Equals what we want it to say will be here. So it's tradition in coding that your first function always says hello world. So that's what I'll write here in quotation marks. You need to place a semicolon at the back to make sure it knows where to end, or it might not work. Now this will be our function that gets called by the HTML page, which means once this is set up, we'll save it, we'll go to the HTML page, and we'll set up the call for that function. There's going to be two things we need to do. The first is I'm going to set up an event that will call it. For this example, I'm going to use a button. You can make a button on your page with input type equals button. The type is what it will be. The value is what the button will say as text on the button itself. So maybe click me. The event I want to activate is when this button is clicked on. So I will use onClick equals the name of my function. This name of the function needs to match exactly how I wrote my function name here in order to work, including the parentheses. So it will be example1. This will add my button, this will call the function, but I need to tell the function what to affect. If I wanted to just make a place for that function to affect to write some HTML, I could maybe just make a new tag here. Paragraph ID equals this ID will need to match exactly with the ID I placed here so that it knows where to affect. So this ID will be ID1 again. And this paragraph could just say something like, this is where the text will change. Anything. It could say anything. This is just an example. So once I've got all this done, I can either save and open the page if I'm offline. On this, I can just click run, and it will put my page here. You can see I've got a button here that will change what the text says here to hello world. And again, that's happening because the onClick event here calls this function by name. This function looks for the element by ID, ID1, which is here, and changes the inner HTML of that to hello world, as we see here.